Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hockey Podcast. My name is Kevin Olenek. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey, Facebook, the Hockey Podcast, or subscribe on wherever you get your podcasts, iTunes, Google, or Spotify. And our Sean is with us right now. Hello, Sean. How are you?
I'm good, Kevin. Thanks.
Good. Our guest... we have a guest today to start off our show. Our guest has never been drafted in the WHL or actually in the NHL. But this week at the age of 30, Kodie Curran signed a one-way contract with the Anaheim Ducks. And he has joined us today to discuss his journey. Kodie, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Great.
All right, Kodie. As Kevin said, you've had quite the different journey to the NHL. The one you went from AJ to University of Calgary and U Sports to AHL, ECHL, and then you went out to Europe. What was how did you end up deciding to go out to Denmark to go play hockey?
Obviously, I played 5 years at Canadian college, and for anyone who played college, those guys become your brothers, and you have a real family feel every single day. You're all working towards this common goal, kind of bigger than yourself, and it's just a real brotherhood, and it's something that you kind of fall in love with. And I never really had anyone tell me what pro was going to be like, or how it was on, this, business side of things. And, for me, it's not that I had a bad taste in my mouth. I just really wasn't ready. And I had a hard adjustment to the North American kind of business side of the game. And I wasn't ready to play. At 25, I still wasn't ready to kind of play pro hockey. And I just really fell in love, like I said, with the brotherhood part of things. So when I came out of college and I went into my first year of North American pro, I had a hard time adjusting and the schedule and things like that. It was tough for me. And I kind of had a really bad year my first year. And, I really just wanted to fall in love with the game of hockey again. And I had an opportunity to play for a Canadian coach over in Europe and travel. And, it wasn't the most competitive league, but definitely I had a couple of ex-college teammates on that team. And I decided to, try and find that love for the game a little bit more that I always had and go over there and really enjoy my time. And I really did.
What do you love now about the game that maybe you didn't realize that you felt that you lost before?
I think that, your love for success is something that I've always really, really tried to keep, because the problem with sports is that when you don't have that success, you can do one of two things. You can totally shut down and kind of not challenge it, or you can really try and find a way to make the most out of the opportunity that you have, because we should be really grateful for what we do for a living, and that's play, a professional sport and be professional athletes. So I think I really just always wanted to try and find success in any situation, try and find a positive. And I don't think I did that my first time in pro. I was kind of negative, and I really always thought, why not me? Why wasn't I getting this opportunity? Someone's kind of screwing me, or it's someone else's fault. And I think that's really changed in my mentality, is that I've really tried to make sure that I prepare the best possible to give myself the best opportunity. And if I don't have success, it's going to be because of me, not because of somebody else.
So in that case, how that's interesting. Like before, when we grow up, there's always someone that we kind of idolize, and when you're interviewed by NHL scouts, it's like, who do you pattern your game after? Who did you pattern your game after then? And now, has that changed at all, or how do you look at that?
Maybe that was a bit of the issue, is that I didn't have kind of that role model or that person that I really looked up to. I always had players that I wanted to be like, or I wanted to play like, your offensive defenseman, or you're kind of, but it was kind of unrealistic for me. I didn't really know guys well enough in the league to really relate myself to someone that was going through kind of the same thing. But then when I went over to Europe, I really tried to kind of find that kind of inspirational story or that guy that found a way. There was always a guy or two in Denmark or in Norway or in Sweden that was kind of defying the odds. And I kind of always latched onto those stories. I've never really related my game a ton to NHL guys or to guys that I've always looked up to. I've kind of looked at their lifestyle and kind of what they have done. And I just do that because my path has always been so different. I've never really met a ton of guys that I could relate to that always, were drafted in a first round, or they always had kind of things always went really well for them. So I think when I went over to Europe, I really tried to find that story to relate to, not necessarily someone's game, but just kind of what they had been through in their life and I started reading a lot about guys and what they were going through. And I think for me, that's who I want to model myself after, is people that have really kind of defied the odds and really have gone through some adversity or some mental fortitude and find ways to find success through those not failures, but just hard times.
Sean, did you have a question?
In 2018-19, you ended up playing for Canada in the Spengler Cup. What was that like?
I had some friends that had played on the team before in the Spengler Cup, and you always, as a kid, want to wear you want to represent your country and wear that maple leaf. And that was an experience that I'm never, ever going to forget. The way that Team Canada treated you as I had my wife with me, and the way that they rolled the red carpet out for the family and they put on events for the family and how they treated us. I don't think it matters if it's the Olympics, if it's the World Juniors, if it's the Spengler Cup or any type of Team Canada. That we're a country, I think, that just really respects kind of the people that they work with, and they look at everyone as equals. And man, what a tournament to be able to play with some of the guys that I've watched my entire life. Kevin Bieksa, hands down, could be one of the coolest people I've ever met. And just as far as all the coaching staff, Sean Burke, Ron Francis, just some amazing people that are iconics in our game. And geez, what an experience to be able to do that and have that opportunity.
You spoke to Sean's heart there when you said Kevin Bieksa. I can't see him, but I think his heart has just grew like 4 sizes. Sean.
Well, I was a Calgary fan my whole life growing up as a kid, and he was always playing for Vancouver, and it's funny how you have this impression of somebody that I never liked him watching him, and you knew he was a personality and he was a great guy. I've always heard he was a great guy off the ice, but on the ice, you always want him on your team, but then when he's an opponent or you watch him in the stands, you hate him, and I think that's what's so great about we call him Juice is he's just he's a real personable guy, and I think that he constantly he entertains people, and one-on-one he was always talking to me. I remember I was our 7th defenseman in the tournament and getting some PP time, and I sat beside him in the dressing room. I wore number 4, he wore number 3, so we were right beside each other, and I said to him, I feel like I can do a little bit more. He goes, man, I play. I think he said, Morgan Riley came up as a young kid in the World Championships when Kev was captain there, and he said this kid started on the power play and ended up playing, 20 minutes a night. So, he always just tried to find a different perspective, a different outlook on things. He was always there for me, kind of just chat through things when maybe I was having a bit of a hard time in the tournament or whatever it may be. So, everyone was like that from top to bottom. So,
Did your relationship with Kevin have an effect on why you ended up choosing the Ducks?
No, I had some interest before from Bob Murray and the Ducks, and my agent was telling me that they were looking at me my first season. I'm not sure if Kevin had said anything or whatever it may be. I mean, the hockey world is so small. I mean, I didn't have the greatest tournament, so I'm sure people see potential in your game and things like that. But I honestly, I'm not quite sure. Maybe we'll have that conversation. I know he lives down there, so maybe we'll have that conversation at some point. But I actually really don't know. I can't really comment on it.
I watched one of the things that I'm led to understand from a couple of the news stories I read is that you were pretty insistent on getting a one-way contract. Was that true?
Yeah, like, over in Europe, when you're playing in high-end leagues like that, and I had a 2-year deal in the KHL, so obviously I had an opportunity to make some good money for my family and be financially stable. And it was just one of those things that we had mentioned that neither one of us would probably have came to the table if we didn't have that option. Just at my age and kind of where we were at, we figured that was the best moving forward, and both sides kind of agreed on it. That was kind of the choice before we had even mentioned. I think it was kind of one way, and it's kind of how it is when you're over there and you're a bit of an older guy and you want to come back. It's not you don't really want to explore the option if it's not a one way. I don't know how many guys come back over at my age. They kind of already have their trial over in North America, but it was something that we just had both agreed on from the start. And it was kind of where we were at.
And from that perspective, getting into the age component of it, I know that a lot of hockey talk has been around where your team needs to be in terms of having under 30-year-olds. What was the conversations like with NHL teams around your age?
It's funny because I'm a unique 30-year-old, I think. I think you look at 30-year-olds, I think most of them that play in North America, or even wherever, they have 500 games pro, and I started playing pro at 25, and I think I only played 50 games my first year or whatever, and then 40 a couple years after that. So I think I only have like 200 pro games. So I'm a young 30-year-old is kind of how people looked at it. Not a lot of mileage on my body. I still don't think I'm in my prime. I still think I have at least 2 or 3 good years to give before I can start to find ways to play in a different style. It's always concerning, but I think the game it's just evolving and it's just changing. I think people are trying to find every advantage out there, whether that's a European guy, an NCAA guy. Like, you look at how many NCAA guys in the last 10 years now, or Tier 2 Alberta Junior Hockey League guys that are getting drafted. Like, when I got drafted, it was 1 or 2 AJ guys. Now there's a ton, and all these NCAA guys. So I just think the game's constantly changing. I think GMs are trying to find different ways than the prototypical draft pick that hopefully kind of works out or whatever it may be. And I think it's so cool to give European hockey and different, Canadian college hockey, whatever it may be. There's always guys in there that are late bloomers or they have a story. I just think it's a different way to find an advantage to help your team. And if it works out, great.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Sean.
And on your team, on Rogel, you played for the last couple of years. You had this past year 2 really high draft picks, first round picks that are coming over next year, and then in Niels Hoglander and Dominic Bach. What was it like to sort of play with those two and knowing that they were young and had been drafted in the first and second rounds of the NHL draft?
Yeah, sorry, Matt, is that me? That's me, right? Okay, sorry, yeah. I echoed there, so I thought somebody was asking me a question again. No, it's funny because for me, I've always tried to be a student of the game, and I've always tried to just learn because I've always been on the outs, or I've always kind of tried to take the next step somewhere, and I've seen guys do it. And man, I'm telling you, the things I've learned from both those kids. Nils, I was with for 2 years, and I learned probably more from him than maybe anybody on our team, other than maybe, Eric Jonas was there a lot for me. What they're doing now as young athletes and young adults, it's incredible because back in my day, it just wasn't the case. You didn't have these platforms to perform on, or the confidence that these young kids have. Nils is his work ethic off the gym or in the gym, off the ice and things like that, how he carries himself and handles himself. He's just an absolute pro. Vancouver fans, so get ready. I'm telling you, this kid's going to be, you look at Elliot, exact same as Pettersson there and the path that he's taken. Nils hasn't been as fiery as Pettersson was, but for me, it's a constant adjustment of him and how he works every single day, the things that he can do on the ice and in practice with his skills. And, he's got a great future. And Bach is just loaded with skill and potential. And you just see these kids at such a young age grow up. They're 25-year-olds already, and it's how they carry themselves and handle themselves. That's a big part of if they're going to have success, and both those young men do. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully seeing them over here in North America and watching them have success.
That Hoglander stuff, I think, is going to excite Canucks fans for sure. But certainly seems like a lot of talent coming from him as well. So yeah, you're again getting to Sean's heart there, big time. I know that. What about your support system? I know Sean and I both know your sister Jess. And she's been tweeting about you for a really long time and about your journey and your family. How has that helped you go through what you have gone through right now and become the person that you have become now?
Oh man, you're hitting home here. Just how you said it, geez, you caught me off guard a little bit, but. Yeah, they, when you're a little bit older in life and you really appreciate your relationships with your family and your sisters and your mom and dad and my wife and our little daughter and just everything you do when you're older, it really means a lot. And I am not standing here having this conversation with you guys if it isn't for my family and what they have done for me. Again, I don't ever want to take anything else away from anybody else's journey or path and how they got to their success or where they're at. But, it wasn't always greener on the other side with our family and kind of how we kind of did things. But man, I'm telling you, the hockey is something we always rallied around. And whether it was 6 a.m. practice with my mom and dad or whether it was having those conversations when we first started contact where I wanted to kind of quit when I was a kid. And my family's traveled over to Europe and over to everywhere to watch me play. And Jessica, for sure, is one of my biggest fans, if not biggest. She's been my rock, and she's always supported everything that I've done, even if it wasn't in the right decisions. And so that's family right there. And like I said, I'm not who I am or where I am without them.
I can relate because I with the interviewing broadcasting as a person over 40 trying to get into the industry, I can totally relate to how you feel. Sometimes you feel it's a younger person's game, air quote, so to speak, but if you have a dream, I think it's important to pursue it. And that's where I'm inspired by you myself. But
I appreciate that. Thank you. And you're right. I think that I've had a lot of people on the other side of it too, where they're saying, Kodie, you got your new wife and you guys, you don't have a house yet and maybe finances are tight or whatever it may be. You need to move forward and use your education and you need to do this or do that. And that's fair for people to say, and that's part of life is people making sure that they want to see you succeed and maybe they don't think hockey is where you're going to find it. But, like I said, you got to see something. You got to see it through it, and you don't get through it without the people that in my life that have kind of said, "Kodie, you got to go for this thing." And it's my path and it's my journey, but it's our path and it's our journey. We all celebrated this together when it happened, and that showed a lot.
Sean, did you have a question?
Not at the moment.
Sorry, I always trying to make sure Sean is still.
Coffee, so we're all good.
Yeah, he's the Sean. So I guess for now, in terms of training and preparing for the next season, and sort of where that is, especially with Anaheim not being a part of the 24 team play-in, and we're not really sure when we're starting next year. What are your plans now, like in terms of training, in terms of getting ready? What are kind of your thought processes now?
Yeah, I think it's like I said, it's new again, right? It's something that I'm gonna have to adjust to, and you go from playing 50 games to 85 now, and we don't know what the season's gonna look like, and but I mean, as far as the staff, they've all reached out to me. Jeremy Bettel and the head of all the fitness training that he oversees everybody and things they do, and a couple other guys got me set up with the Anaheim's workout program now. So we talked Saturday, and I start that Monday. So, that's how quickly the turnaround is. And these guys are all really, they're professionals, and they're the best at what they do, and they get you as ready as they can. And now the rest is up to us to put the work in and just be patient. And, we have to be as safe as we can and make sure that, everyone's doing their part just in sense of this pandemic, and making sure that we do the right things to ensure everyone's safety. And, the NHL is top class, obviously, and they're going to make sure that it's the right decision when it is. But yeah, we all know hockey's going to come back. We just don't know when. But, my wife and I and our daughter are going out to our summer place there in Osoyoos. So there's a gym out there and a skating facility. So I'll just get back to normal on life as it is with gyms opening up and things like that. And, we skate kind of 3 days a week, work out 5 days a week. So you just get back into it. It kind of becomes just, second nature and routine to, there are adjustments that I'm going to have to make as far as being able to move as good as I can and just be, those functional movements. Guys in the NHL at this day and age, they're so good, and they're so agile and so quick. So, there's some things that I sat down with Anaheim and wanted to work on, and so that I could make that adjustment as quickly as I could. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how my body can change this summer and really get as ready as I can for camp, whenever that may be.
What are some of the things you're hoping to work on?
Well, I think in the SHL and the KHL, things that we were trying to work on was just, your puck touches and trying to be as quick as you can, getting the puck off your stick as quick as you can. So for me, I've always tried to work every single summer at getting the puck off as quick as I can after I make a move or delivering the puck, crisp and clean. So for me, a lot of puck touches this summer. And then secondly, will just be my skating. I don't think you could ever become a perfect skater. So I'm going to be doing a ton of edge work. I work with Jake Bean a little bit in the summer. And he's one of my really good buddies. So we'll be chatting and doing some stuff here in Calgary. And, as far as that, just be as well conditioned and ready to go for an 82 game season. That's my goals is to play every game. And that's what I want to do. I don't know why I would settle for anything less. And I want those to be all NHL games. So I have a big summer ahead of me if I want that to be a goal of mine that I achieve.
Sure, for sure. Well, Kodie, I congratulations again. I think this is it's great to see. I'm really proud of you from sticking to your guns and doing what you believe in and adjusting your game to fit. And I know for me, I believe that you're going to have an 82 game season in Anaheim whenever that starts, and hopefully, of course, it's sooner rather than later. We can all hope that with fans in the stands. And congratulations, all the best from me. I don't know if Sean has anything to add or.
No, just reiterating all that. It's fantastic to see someone just work hard and get rewarded, even if you're past the standard sort of route of reaching the NHL. So congrats, and well, I'll definitely be looking forward to watching you and following you for the next couple seasons.
Awesome, guys. I really appreciate you guys having me on. And like I said, anytime, I love to talk. And, whenever you guys need anything, just let me know. I really appreciate it.
We will. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
Well, we thank Kodie for joining us. And, yeah, I think, it's going to be fascinating to watch what happens there. Really seemed like a really determined guy, and we're looking forward to hearing more on that. So Tyler is now with us. Hello, Tyler. How are you?
Hey, Kevin. I'm all right. Back off hiatus. I had the week off work. I'm not sure I was any more physically refreshed, but it was nice to do some different stuff around here, go camping, hit the golf course, etc.
Yes, things are open. With you and Sean and I, we're going old school because no Chris, no Devin, no Heidi this week. We're going the OGs of the hockey podcast have gathered.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's enough hot air between the three of us to keep this balloon afloat, I think.
That's true. And by the way, when I say OGs, I did not mean old guys. I meant originals. So
Yes.
Yes.
Well, the OG term has been used to describe Mr. Chris Cuthbert here this week, so we'll get into that, but
yeah.
Very appropriate.
Yes, that's true, actually. We will get into that. We'll talk about that. We, of course, we have some updates. We haven't really heard from you, Tyler, about what the new system has at the NHL has come on, as you've been away, of course. But this week, it's been confirmed that the play-ins will be the best of 5, and then the playoffs is the best of 7. And the reseeding part will be opposed to the brackets, which is winner of, if they're going to reseed. I have an idea about that I want to propose, but I don't think that this is necessarily going to work. And then as of Monday, whenever you are listening to the podcast, but Monday is the day Phase 2, June 8th, is beginning. But we've heard some rumblings that they are considering pushing the camps from the middle of July to the end of July, beginning of August. So, Tyler, we haven't heard from you about all of these scenarios. Kind of tell us what you've been thinking, what your thoughts are, and what you're thinking here.
Well, for me, it's a relief to hear that the 4 rounds, the traditional 4 rounds of playoffs, will be all best of 7s. I think to eliminate, or at least really, really quiet the people that want to put an asterisk on the Stanley Cup this year, that's one way to do it. In terms of integrity, and clearly the players feel that this is important as well. When you are in the final 16, it's got to be 16 W's to hoist that Stanley Cup. So I'm happy to hear about that. Of course, that's going to stretch out the time frame here to get everything done and get on with next season. But I think that was really important, because it's already a big compromise here with the whole 24-team thing to start with, and then coming down to the group of 16. I think the best of 5 will work for that play-in round. I don't have any issues with that. Of course, all of this just depends on, whether the bigger issues in the world will allow hockey to be played again. You look at what's going on in the United States these days, it's hard to imagine how they can get professional sports going again. But, hopefully that will happen.
Yeah. Do you, I guess from your perspective, what are your thoughts on some of the hub cities that have been put out there? We have Vegas. We have, of course, we've heard Vancouver, Edmonton, Columbus, Toronto, Minneapolis, Pittsburgh are amongst some of the other cities that are out there. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that one of them needs to be a Canadian city? And do you think one of them needs to be an east-west city?
Well, I don't think they have to both be in the east and west, although, Commissioner Bettman there did mention it would be one for the west, one for the east. So I think their preference is probably to put one city in the west somewhere and one in the east, keep the travel to a minimum. The list that he unveiled, I didn't think there were really many surprises there. Yes, Toronto was still on the list. I think the league would really like Toronto to work. The logistics there with the Scotiabank Arena and the league offices being attached to Scotiabank Arena, I think for the league that's attractive. But from the broader point of view, I'm not sure that going into Southern Ontario is as good an idea as other places. So we'll see what happens there. Does there need to be a Canadian city? I don't think so, but it may optically kind of sell better with hockey fans if there's one and one. In terms of the West, Vegas sure seems like a good candidate. They're, again, kind of like Toronto, a place where league events get held, think of the awards. But as far as Western Canadian cities, I think we can probably, the three of us, agree that Edmonton seems to have the edge over Vancouver in terms of, the physical capabilities to put this on. But Vancouver is a nice place for people to be spending a summer if that's what the players want.
Yeah, I personally do think, in living out here, I think Edmonton seems to be a better fit. Although I did read some backlash from some people having in Edmonton having that there. I think that maybe there's a bit of a confusion of how that is being presented because, again, there are not going to be fans in the stands. So I think from that logistical sense, it would seem to fit Edmonton would seem to fit better, but I don't know. I'm not convinced that, and maybe Sean sees this a little bit differently, but I'm kind of with you, Tyler. I think one of them is definitely going to be Vegas, and I don't think Edmonton and Vancouver are going to be the hub cities. As much as Kenny and Horgan are pushing for it, I'm not seeing it right now. But
I know the scuttlebutt is that the Vegas has got the inside track. They've got all the hotels. They've got 2 arenas that they can use. They've got right down the strip. They've got the practice arena, which isn't that far as well. It does make sense if they can make it so that the 40-degree summer weather that is usually in Vegas isn't affecting the ice. I think that might be the only issue. But if there is an inside in terms of a favorite between Vancouver and Edmonton, I think it just has to be Edmonton. As good as Vancouver is a spot, they don't have the infrastructure that Edmonton has with the practice rink connected to Rogers Arena place.
Rogers Place, yeah.
Rogers Place.
You've done a Kevin now.
And they've got hotels connected to it as well. So I think it just comes down to whether or not they decide to go with the two best options, or they do decide that they need to have one in the East and one in the West. I can understand why they would want one in the East and one in the West for time zones of games and everything, but I think they should just be looking at how you can, which cities are the 2 best ones, and just go with it and not overthink things with that. So, like, you look at the options for the Eastern Conference: Columbus, Pittsburgh, and Toronto. Those are the 3 Eastern Conference cities that were listed. And Toronto, at this point, I don't think you can safely feel safe that you can create a bubble when they're continuing to have 400 or 500 cases a day. And then you've got Pittsburgh and Columbus, and I haven't had the chance to look into their situations, but maybe that is where what they end up doing. But I do think that you got to look at stuff. You shouldn't. They shouldn't be handcuffing themselves by saying there has to be one in the East and one in the West.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's not going to be any fans in the seats. Why does the location really matter that much in terms of time zones? I mean, they can just play the games earlier in Vegas if that's the Eastern Conference hub city, right? And be probably a little weird for the players and such. But let's say if they want to have games scheduled at 1, 4, and 7 Eastern, that would be 10, 1, and 4 Pacific time. So a little early for that first game. But I mean, if the players just get used to it, I from what I understand, broadcasters may be calling the games off monitor from other places. So, like, what is, I don't think it's too crucial that they actually place the Eastern Conference hub city in the East somewhere. So, we'll see how that all shakes out. I mean, all the points that Sean made about Vegas sure make that one sound like an attractive option. One other thing about Edmonton as well as versus Vancouver is that Vancouver just had a league event with the draft last year. So, the NHL may feel like going to Edmonton would be a nice little bone for the Oilers organization, I suppose.
Yeah, and looking at the Franklin County cases, it's at 6,406. In Ohio specifically, 36,350, 353 to up 353. So certainly not the numbers that we are seeing here in BC and in Alberta. I'm just going to pull up Pittsburgh here quickly while we're talking. The Allegheny County, 1,752 were confirmed. So in terms, I guess, if you're looking at numbers, it would seem Pittsburgh would be a better option. The other thing that I think Vegas has an advantage of, and if you look at what they do at the UFC and with boxing, I mean, they have events that go on there at midnight, and they seem suited to have events that can accommodate Eastern time. I mean, the UFC, when they have their events there, they seem to accommodate to Eastern times, and they seem to run really well. So I don't know. I don't see how Vegas can't do that, and I do agree with you, Tyler. I think I don't know if it's necessarily that it needs to be an East-West thing, especially with some of the other logistics going on. I know Elliot Friedman mentioned, and I believe I heard from one other person to confirm that there's not going to be reporters at these hub cities at this point in time. So that's not going to happen. So I agree with you. I don't necessarily think it needs to be any East-West per se, but
yeah.
The other part of this is the round robin, and I know Brian Burke has been a person that is not for this round robin. What do you think of the round robin? Is it do you like it, or?
Well, I don't, but I'm not sure what's a better idea. Like when you get to the group of 16 there, it wouldn't be fair to have the teams that had the bye, not play any meaningful games going into that, right? So, and it's not really going to be a true tune-up if you just say, well, let's play some exhibition games. There's got to be something on the line, or it's just not going to be the same thing. So I don't know. I think they need to get creative somehow, because like if you're Boston and you were first overall and you play these games after a long layoff and you're suddenly not first overall going into the actual playoffs, I mean, how's that fair, right? So I don't know. They got to get creative in some way to still advantage the teams that were in first place in their conferences when the pause happened. But I don't know how that will work. I'm not jazzed about it, but there has to be something for them to get up to playoff readiness when the 16 teams are there.
Yeah, I believe there's supposed to be like one or two exhibition games before all this start, the play-in rounds and the round robin for the top four teams in each conference starts too as well. So I do think that it's going to be very interesting to see how sloppy the games are going to be going. We talked about this last week. It's going to have playoff like April, May playoff intensity with September, October sloppiness. It's going to be quite crazy.
Yeah. I guess that, I didn't put this on the agenda, but I do think I would be interested in Tyler's perspective about this in terms of from an official being a referee. How are you expecting these games to be called? Like, we have the playoff sort of intensity. We're going to have what Sean mentioned, that preseason sloppiness.
Yeah.
From an official's perspective, how do you look at how do you officiate these games?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, what I believe in is that it should, the playoffs should be officiated the same as the regular season. Now, we know that that's not the case. So, no, I think that the refs will probably apply a little more of a let them play philosophy out there because, inevitably it's going to be a little bit sloppy. So if they're calling everything tight, their games won't have any flow. It'll be very frustrating. And the league wants they're going to want a very attractive product when the thing comes back on TV. They're not going to want a game lacking flow with the Zebras constantly stopping play and a penalty box. So I think it's going to lean towards let them play just for historical reasons and to cut the players some slack from the long layoff.
Plus, they're going to want that intensity, so they're not going to want that intensity to get an emotion to get sort of buzz killed by constant penalties and power plays, even though that does actually help with the offensive side of the game.
There is a balance there. You do want the power play opportunities because it creates the offense, but the game needs to flow as well, or is it's not as much enjoyment to watch when there's too many breaks in the action.
Yeah. That's it. I think that's going to be interesting. I think, the more and more I think about this, I think how coaches adapt to what happens here. I mean, we've got pretty much this. I mean, you look at U.S. college bowl games. I mean, this is a longer preparation period than even that. So, in terms of how coaches prepare the teams for this, I think whoever does this the best, I firmly believe is going to win this, is going to be the winner of the Stanley Cup. I don't know as much of it there'll be talent, but I think that this is probably the one year that coaching is going to make a difference. Not that coaching doesn't make a difference, but this really could be a year where we see coaching and preparation being the biggest difference of why someone wins the Stanley Cup and why one doesn't.
Yes and no. I think that it does take time and game reps for these players to get back into and knowing the timing and the feel of working the system. So they're not going to, it's not like they can just practice and they're going to all this time and be set up for their opponent. That being said, especially in these play-in rounds, the coaches are probably already looking at their opposition and trying to game plan for how to defend and exploit the weaknesses of the other team. So you're going to have, it's going to be very interesting to see how what coaches really rely on the hard match, what coaches will just let their team play.
Mm-hmm. What I'll be interested to see is the older rosters versus younger rosters and how one is able to jump in here on the fly as opposed to the other. I would think that the older rosters, they're going to really need those exhibition games to shake off some rust and get their legs back.
Yeah, I'm wondering about this 2 game. I wonder if it should be something like 4, but I guess I still think there's still some logistics to be worked out here. Also, I'll talk about the NBA in a quick second here, but the lottery. What are your thoughts on the lottery system here? Do you like it? Do you like the potential of chaos?
I know Sean's dying for placeholder to be picking first, but
yes.
3 placeholders. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, no, I think it's fine. I mean, the whole lottery system's a bit of a joke in the first place, so whatever. Just as long as everybody can get into agreement on whether it's fair or not, that's good. But I mean, yeah, it's a bit. You have to do something that kind of works with the whole play-in component here. So, no, I don't have any quibbles with the draft. At the end of the day, it's still upon the teams to do their homework and pick the right player when the opportunity is there for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I think it's a good way to get some attention, and I mean, the NHL could use some certain more chaos anyway. It is fun, but so I think that adds to that content part of it. Just quickly looking at the NBA, because their return to play has been approved by both executive and the Players Association. It is a 22 teams. They did not split them evenly though. It's 9 teams from the West, 9 teams from the East, 13 from the West. They're going to have an 8-game regular season to determine who's going to get into the playoffs. So I guess I partially have to wonder if someone from that lower tier in the West is going to cross over and go to the East. They all will be in Orlando. They at Disney World, no fans. Is anything from there that you think that the NHL could apply, or are these 2 different situations? Or
it's 2 different situations. I think the NBA has already been a little bit more thinking ahead and trying to change things up and not just sticking with the standard format that has been they've been doing for years, like the NHL. And I do believe that it doesn't matter where they whether or not it's the the top 16 teams in the Eastern and Western conferences will join by teams currently within from what I understand is it doesn't matter whether an Eastern or Western Conference team, and they just you just get seeded 1 through 16.
Oh, that's
after
right.
After the eight games, and the first place plays 16, and second plays 15, and so on and so forth. So they're getting, because they don't have to worry about travel, they've gotten rid of the conferences for the playoffs.
Yeah, no, in basketball, that's interesting because I think in a lot of cases the Western Conference Final is kind of the tougher matchup than say the NBA Finals, right? So, although last year the Eastern Conference team beat the Western Conference team, so there is that. But that was one thing I actually missed from earlier about the format. Kevin, you asked about the reseeding there. I mean, that's another one that the PA has taken as a huge win. I mean, it's been clear since the bracket went in for the 2015 playoffs. The players have hated this thing so much. You've heard it almost every year. Prominent players complaining about the fact that sometimes the two best teams in the conference are meeting in the second round as opposed to the third round. So it's nice to see that that's gone. I know fans like the bracket. I know the league loves the bracket for promotional purposes and running contests and all that, but it's still hard to get around the competitive fairness part of it there. And so I don't know if the league threw that in as a bit of a bone for the PA to get some compromises on some other things or what. I would imagine it was, just one of those things that were negotiated. But my hope is that maybe that stays as a permanent thing, because I don't know. Like I say, I don't know anybody inside the game that likes the bracket more than the reseed.
I remember in '94 during the Canucks final playoff run, if the Flames would have won that series, they would have been playing San Jose, and it would have been, I can't remember the other teams, but because that was the year San Jose upset Detroit in 7 games, the same day that Bure scored that overtime goal, and then they did the reseeding as well, and I was a big fan of that because it allows for some intriguingly interesting matchups, and I think that we can do that again. And I think, for me, one of the things that in normal playoff times, like when you go back through the Crosby-Ovechkin playoff era, those were some of the better games in the second round. And when we got to the third round, like, no offense to Ottawa, I mean, I know that it's pretty easy to be bashing that organization, but in a lot of ways nowadays. But that Pittsburgh-Ottawa series, just for me, looking back as an example, just didn't have that same depth or excitement or anything that the Pittsburgh-Washington series did, even though some of them were only 5 or 6 games. I much enjoyed those games and would have rather have seen them in an Eastern Conference final than a Pittsburgh-Ottawa. To me, that to me probably is almost the best argument to go back to the reseeding is the two best teams need to be in that conference spot. And, I don't know, I think in part, and looking back, I mean, we'll reminisce in history here just quickly, but looking back, I think that was in part why no one got into that Ottawa-Pittsburgh series, is because there was nobody that believed Ottawa could beat Pittsburgh.
Well, and it still went 7 games to overtime, did it not?
Yes,
yeah. So, I mean, that would be what Gary Bettman say. It would be like, well, we had a great conference final. I don't know. For me, the example that I think is, the one that sort of stands out is 2018 playoffs. You had Nashville and Winnipeg play in the second round, and they were the two best records in the Western Conference, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yeah.
You ended up with Winnipeg and Vegas in the Western Conference Final, which is great for Winnipeg, but you could have had potentially Nashville and Vegas, and how awesome would that have been in terms of, the fan excitement and everything, and the league would have loved that, obviously. So, if you're Nashville and you got to the final the year before and then you're facing Winnipeg in the second round, I think you feel a little bit cheated there. So, everybody knows what the format's going to be when the season starts, but like I said before, I just don't think the league's been able to sell this bracket thing to people that are inside the game.
I get what they're trying to do. You're trying to make it so that you have to go through your division before you can get out. Like, you have to get through your division first, and I like that. I think that's as an idea. I like it. It's unfortunate we have. Yeah, unfortunately at times you have two of the best teams in the conference facing off in the second round. If you look at tennis and how they do their brackets and all that, you've got your first and your second like on opposite sides, and they still meet they're even with a bracket they can meet in the semifinal or final or whatever you want that at that point. But because you're hampered by divisions here, that's the problem. Is like you have disparity in strength of divisions. Mm-hmm. Like you look at.
I was going to say if the NFL does the reseed after their wild card round, then what's the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The sad part. We're going to get it, but the saddest part of this year, though, too, for the other side of this is, we did not get that Calgary-Edmonton Battle of Alberta matchup that I think everybody in Canada, no matter what fan base you were, was looking forward to in some way, shape, or form.
Oh, geez, I think even a hardcore fan in the U.S. would have looked forward to that, the way the regular season unfolded.
Yeah. We're not going to get that, and I think that's the value of the division. Maybe there's a compromise. Maybe you start division-wise, and then you reseed after it. Maybe that's the way that you go.
And of course, in the COVID times here, we've seen all those playoff matchups shown on TV again. But the flip side of that too is there's been great playoff rivalries that were not geographic, but because of the 1-8 format. You look at most recent example, I think for us would be the Canucks and Blackhawks.
Yeah.
With the bracket, that doesn't happen anymore unless one of those teams is a wild card. And those were three fiercely fought, nasty series, and it was great, compelling hockey. Tough for Canuck watchers, because of how stressful that was. But the U.S. television ratings were gigantic, even though one of the teams was Canadian. So I don't think there were any issues with that. You go back to the 90s, Dallas and Edmonton. They had some great matchups there. Would that have happened with a bracket? Probably not. So I don't know. And those are natural. Those were rivalries that became naturally born through playoff matchups.
Yeah. Detroit, Colorado.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Philadelphia and Boston. It was Philadelphia that came back from that 3-0 deficit. Does that happen in this new format? No. And I don't know how big of a rivalry that is, but we don't have those kind of things without that,
Mm-hmm.
So
mm-hmm.
I think the NHL needs to find the balance there between, those state rivalries. Even Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, I think those have always been fun series. Like having those geographic rivalries versus those team rivalries is where the NHL needs to find that balance.
Yeah, if they, if you get a matchup that's got that geographical connection, I think that's bonus. But trying to force it, I don't know. That doesn't work for me very well.
All it takes is one good series, one heated series, and you have a rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
That's like what happened with Vancouver and Chicago, and then you got two more. Vancouver, Boston. That's another one that rivalry was heated after the final.
Absolutely. Even for the next 5 years, every time those two teams got together, there was quite a bit of spice there. It was helped along by Brad Marchand fanning the flames, but was just one series that, just through natural occurrence, created that rivalry.
Like if for chance the Flames in Colorado met up again this year, you could see a chance at making that rivalry get kicked up a notch, because you're going to have the story of the Flames trying to make amends for getting kicked out by the Avs last year.
Yeah. Quick tangent on playoff matchups, by the way. Just recently seeing the Canucks Leafs 1994. It's still weird to say Western Conference Final when you got Toronto involved, but that's just amazing. Hey, how did that happen? And like, if that were to be done today, what a gong show that would be in terms of the media coverage and the fans and Twitter. It'd just be friggin' nuts. Well, it's a good thing that happened back then instead of now. I mean, now it would just be ridiculous.
Well, now it'd be a Stanley Cup final, and
yeah.
So is it that there's the one couple guys or one guy or person that was simming on using NHL 20, and they went through just this based off of point percentages, went through all that, and the Canucks and Leafs met in that alternate universe. They met in the Stanley Cup final and went to Game 7 overtime.
Yeah,
it just would have been just.
Where was Game 7 being played?
That would have been it would have been in that alternate universe, or it would have been in Toronto, because I think they had the better record.
Yeah, that's what I would have thought too. But man, yeah. Oh, and then just again, quick aside on that Leafs Canucks series. I mean, just seeing the simplicity of the hockey there too. Just take it up the ice, get over the blue line, wind up a slapper, and blast it past Potvin. Just just like, can we have more of that, please? That was awesome.
Yeah, that was. That series was. There was so much hatred between the two fan bases at that particular point in time too. I would buy popcorn to watch the Twitter war between the Leafs and the Canucks.
I would have been interested to hear, what people thought of Bob Cole and Harry Neal if they were pro Leafs or whatever back in that time. I mean, I thought it was pretty balanced commentary when I was listening to it. But another quick one. Sorry to pick on Felix Potvin here, but defensive zone breakdown. Pavel Bure gets the puck. I mean, just breaks the ankles of one defenseman, then just completely undresses Potvin. I mean, it wasn't even fair back then. Sometimes with Bure.
Yeah,
Bure was a cheat code.
Oh man, yeah, yeah.
Too bad we don't have Devin on here, but I guess that it'll be interesting. It would be interesting to see where we'd put Felix Potvin in the level of best Leaf goalies of current eras. I don't know if I would have Potvin that high up. I mean, he was good. He reminded me of Mike Vernon in a lot of ways. I mean, he could win you a couple of series. Could he win you a Stanley Cup? Well, he didn't.
Yeah, but no Leafs goalie has won a Stanley Cup in forever.
That's true. Hey, Frederick Anderson has as good a chance as any of them. I'm a Freddie fan for sure. He's a real difference maker for the Leafs. They just gotta kind of figure out the rest of their defensive play there if they're gonna get serious about contending.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. Yes, that's very true. Well, speaking of Bob Cole, Harry Neal, and Leaf bias, if you heard Leaf fans believe strongly that Mr. Jim Houston is a Leaf hater, and Canuck fans love Jim Houston, but the big story this week probably impacts Jim Houston. We'll get into him a bit. But Chris Cuthbert, the longtime voice for Grey Cups, 25 Grey Cups Chris Cuthbert has been involved in. He has called, did you know he has called a Grey Cup victory for every CFL Canadian franchise? One of the most famous calls in hockey history, the golden goal. Probably, I would have to say, if at lowest would be 2 for most people, depending on where you put Paul Henderson. But he has moved on. He has moved from TSN to Sportsnet. This was announced on Friday. He said on his Twitter and basically has said that it's been on his bucket list to call a Stanley Cup final. And he's going to have an opportunity to do that. And I think that that's a very... First of all, I don't know if this has been talked about enough, but did that not feel like a little bit of a shot at Jim Houston?
Yeah, I just want to correct one thing there. I don't think Chris has been on his Twitter mentioning that this will give him an opportunity to call a Stanley Cup final, but he has mentioned that.
He has mentioned that as part of his bucket list, yes.
Yeah, he certainly has vocalized that on a number of occasions. That's one thing that's missing from the resume there. And you'd have to think that if he were to jump over to Sportsnet and give up football, that that would be at least something that the network would be willing to consider. You know, I don't know how they would do that. Maybe alternating years with Jim or something. I don't know how that would look. But you'd have to think that that would be part of the deal. Chris is a guy that can, really use, he's got big leverage here in negotiating right now. So you'd have to think that for sure he's doing a conference final, with all due respect to Dave Randorf, who got to do the Western Conference final last year. And you'd for sure be thinking that he's going to be doing a good number of Leaf games on Saturday nights.
Yeah, I think that he probably will be taking over sort of more of the early games, just because I think, for as irrational and stupid as the Jimmy Houston hates the Leafs bandwagon is, I think Sportsnet and Rogers has definitely heard it, and you would jump at the chance to get Chris Cuthbert anyways because he's that good, but this just gives him an opportunity to move Jimmy Houston closer to home. He doesn't have to go fly out east to call the early games every year, almost every week, but he can and you'll get that. But I think you'll see them probably switch years type deal until for the next little bit. They're both about the same age. They're both going to be continuing on for another 5, 6, 7 years. So Houston's got to call a few Stanley Cup finals and all that. So I think that's kind of what they're probably going to do.
Yeah, Jim Houston's called, I believe now, 11 consecutive Stanley Cup finals. And if he were to be doing it again this year, that would be 12. So he had a pretty good run there. I don't think there's any question that this is a, if you're Jim Houston, you're probably not that jazzed about this. At the same time, though, maybe he would prefer to be doing more Western games and cut down his travel. There's still some great matchups there in the Western Conference in the late game, and I know it's kind of strange to me, again, irrational reactions to announcers. Like Dave Randorf's a BC guy, he's from Delta. He was with Sports Page. I mean, he should be a well-liked Vancouver guy, and yet Canuck fans generally don't seem to care for Dave Randorf very much when he's doing a Saturday night game. If it's not Shorty or it's not Jim Houston, they're not happy with it. And and Rogers, from what I can tell over the first 6 years of their deal, there's definitely a pattern there of listening to Twitter and making changes based on fan reaction. And there's also a pattern of making decisions that eliminate some of the dollars in the travel expenditure column. How did Louis DeBrusk become the late night commentator and replace Mike Johnson? Well, I think that was because Louis is based out west and there's less travel involved. So you look at it right now, you got Jim Houston going east to do Leaf games from Vancouver, and you've got Dave Randorf coming out from Toronto to do the late games out west. This move kind of cuts out a lot of travel expense. And I mean, that's important to Rogers because they're already having a hell of a time making money on this deal.
So, I guess to me, I almost feel like, we'll get to the pairings here, but I almost feel that the person I feel worse for at Sportsnet is Shorty. Because I think I do think it's time for him to get more national recognition. I mean, I guess you can move him as part of the hometown hockey package if you're going forward with that. But he's kind of the one that has been sort of feels like squished out a little bit here. Am I interpreting this wrong? I mean, it's either Randorf or Shorty that's getting the short straw, per se.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody other than Jim Houston gets pushed down the depth chart a little bit, and maybe even Jim himself in some regard gets pushed down a little bit. So it's a business, you know. I mean, you got to have the best people in place and do whatever it takes to push the ratings up and increase the revenue column there. So, it's too bad. I think, though, if anybody's, I think there's some other guys that are maybe at risk of losing some national work. I'm thinking of Kevin Quinn out of Edmonton there. I'm not sure that he gets as many national games. It sure seemed like in the last couple of years, Shorty was the preferred guy for some of those deeper depth role, assignments, if you know what I'm saying. What happens to John Bartlett?
Yeah.
I wonder if John Bartlett, he's right now he does the Leafs regional games and he does some national work. I wonder if he goes back to TSN to do Habs games, because now if you look at the TSN shuffle, like they had Chris and Gord Miller splitting their Leafs package of 26 games. So presumably Gord Miller now takes on the 13 Leafs games that Chris was doing. And then Chris was doing a bunch of Senators games. So now they've got, 30-ish Senators games to try and fill. Do they bring Brian Mudryk over to do Senators games? That leaves a hole with their Habs package. So maybe John Bartlett goes back to TSN to do the Canadiens, and that kind of sorts it all out from there. So it'll be interesting to see. I think, and we'll get a bit of a preview here whenever the hockey starts going again with the hub cities.
Yeah, I think because I think the two play-by-play guys who were getting the most push up from local regional broadcasts to national were Shorthouse and Rick Ball. Mm-hmm. And I think they'll still get some, just not as many. And then you won't be seeing as many Kevin Quinn games and as many John Bartlett games as well, because with Randorf being probably more working more in the East again, and then coming over to the West when needed.
Yeah, the other thing here too is there's the rumors floating around that the Flames regional TV deal may move over to TSN. And if that were the case, would Rick Ball go over to TSN to call the Flames games? It's interesting to note there is there's now an opening with the CFL on TSN, so I could definitely see Rick Ball moving over to TSN, and then again you're swapping Rick and Chris over, just between the networks. So lots to be seen there.
Could you see Randorf jump into TSN?
Jump back, because he was hosting the CFL panel for a few years. I could see it, depending on, it all comes down to contracts too. We don't know I didn't even know Chris Cuthbert's contract was up.
Yeah.
I think I don't see Randorf going back. It was always his long-term goal to have a high profile in hockey. So I don't see him going back to TSN for that reason. Randorf came to Sportsnet to be the number 3 announcer. He got promoted to number 2 last year when Paul Romanek was pushed out. I think he'd be content still doing, games for Sportsnet as the number 3 announcer, working the first couple of rounds of the playoffs and getting lots of Saturday night work and Wednesday night work. I don't see a huge change for him. I think it's further down the depth chart like we've been talking about. What does that mean for a John Shorthouse or a Kevin Quinn?
Here, let me throw one more scenario out there that I could see. Could you see Jim Houston permanently going to the Blue Jays?
No.
No, I don't know. I never thought about that. I think Sportsnet's goal is to get Dan Schulman to be doing their games full time, but he still seems to be quite happy with his ESPN work doing college basketball and some MLB on radio, particularly the World Series. I think that's really important to Dan that he still has that opportunity.
Yeah, I don't see, again, that would mean Houston would go back out to having to travel from Vancouver to Toronto and around all that. So I think it's a lot. I think he wants to spend. I think he'd be quite still okay with sticking with hockey more than anything else, I think.
Yeah, and as far as alternating years for the Stanley Cup final or whatever, I mean, I can see that from Chris's perspective, because he kind of had that shared number one job with Gord Miller on their NHL work in the past. So basically, what happened there is in 1 year, one of the announcers would get the best series in the first round, which might involve a Canadian team, and then the other announcer would do the third round games, and then they'd switch each year. So Chris was doing that before, so I could see him being interested in that type of arrangement with Sportsnet.
I think the problem, this is my perception with Houston, that I think is maybe it's just me, but when he's calling Winnipeg games, or when he's calling even Edmonton, when he called the Oilers run, there was something about it that didn't feel as connected as a Cuthbert does. I feel when Chris Cuthbert calls a game, no matter what Canadian team it is, I feel like there's a connection. And
even if it's a U.S. team, I think I hear what you're saying, Kevin. There seems to be some consistency there in terms of the enthusiasm.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that Houston's not enthusiastic about Winnipeg or Edmonton or anything. It's just it doesn't feel right. And I feel like it just feels a little bit more right that Cuthbert is calling cross-Canada games. I feel like when Houston called the 2011 Stanley Cup, the Canuck run, I felt like that made sense. But when Houston was calling the Winnipeg run, it just didn't feel to me like it made sense.
Well, I'll put it this way, for me, Chris Cuthbert was the voice of Canuck games in the early 2000s, the West Coast Express era, from 2002 to 2004, all of those series. Chris became well liked by Western Canadian hockey fans, despite being a guy from Ontario. There never seemed to be that issue with him. That perception never seemed to be an issue. Maybe it's because he got his start in Edmonton and everything, but he's a guy from Ontario, and Jim Houston's not from Ontario, and fans there, so I don't know. There's just a difference there for some reason, but I don't think there's any denying. I mean, you listen to Jim Houston's calls in the 2011 run. I mean, it's a wonderful day for an exorcism, and take that, Ben Eager. I mean, that kind of stuff, you just don't hear that when he's doing a Leaf game or any other kind of game. I mean, he gets up for a Stanley Cup final, but I'm with you. I just don't think there's the same engagement with the game there, if it's not the Canucks. So I don't know where Oilers fans and Flames fans are at with Jim Houston. We don't really hear much about, from them, because he doesn't do a lot of their games, I guess. But I don't know. I think, game to game, Chris seems to the engagement seems to be more consistent there than it is with Jim Houston. And for most of the time that Chris was doing games for TSN in the playoffs, it felt like Canadian teams were playing. There was no shortage of gusto there.
The thing with Cuthbert is, I just did some quick research, and he came up through the national ranks. He didn't come up through the regional ranks as Houston did. Mm-hmm. So I think we hear what we want to hear with Houston more than anything else. Everyone knows he came up through calling Vancouver games in regional Vancouver Canucks games, and so everyone kind of, once you find that, you end up having that bias against him, unfortunately. Yeah. I think he does have the energy and everything that you need to be a national play-by-play guy, because I just find him. I think he does have it. It's just that because everyone knows he came up through the ranks as a Vancouver Canucks, grew up in Vancouver, called the Canucks games, then went national, everyone still associates him with being from Vancouver. It's the same thing. It's why Craig Simpson gets a lot of people associate Craig Simpson with the Oilers, and same thing with DeBrusk, and whenever you get Bartlett calling and all that. Like everyone just sees where did he come from? And
I think that's part of the reason why Cuthbert's been brought on, because they've done the John Bartlett Leaf game experiment this last year, and the feeling there's that he's a Montreal guy, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, let's do the pairing thing here quickly. Who would you pair Cuthbert with? He did games with Greg Millen before.
I could definitely see them doing, weeknight Leaf games together. I could see that for sure. But beyond that, I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, Chris and Craig Simpson have never worked together before.
Yeah, well, as you said, they don't want to. If this was a part of this was to get rid of some of the travel, then you are going to end up with your DeBrusk and Houston as your late West Coast Western pairing, and then you're going to put Craig Simpson and Chris Cuthbert together at least to start and see how that goes. Like they're both
they're going to have to try that. Yeah,
they've both done it forever. I'm sure they can do it. Like Cuthbert's worked with Ray Ferraro. If you can work with Ray Ferraro and the big personality that Ray is, I'm sure you can figure out how to work with anyone.
Oh, sure.
Chris worked with John Garrett way back when in the early to mid-90s there as well. So.
Yeah.
And then you'll still get Rudy in there every once in a while. Like if it's I'm sure they'll give Rudy some games as well, because he's a good color guy as well.
You could go.
Yeah, I think there'll definitely be a period of experimentation there. I mean, when Rogers took over the package in 2014-15, they did a lot of announcer swapping there to try and figure things out. And then there hasn't been very much of it in more recent years. But I think you'll start to see that experimenting happen again.
Yeah. I always thought Cuthbert and Millen were a good combination. And I think Houston and Simpson I think they're comfortable with each other. I think they complement each other's style. I wouldn't mind seeing that. And I like Randorf and DeBrusk together. I think that's I've always enjoyed that late night combination.
Yeah, me too. No, if Cuthbert and Greg Millen work together, I think the network would be happy with that. And, because I think Jim and Craig want to keep doing games together. I think Dave and Louie want to keep doing games together. So, how they make that work with the schedule is kind of the issue there. But, and then you still got Gary Galley out of Ottawa there. He was doing most of his games with John Bartlett there last year. But, where does he fit in? That's another one to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is, is Craig Simpson still based out of Edmonton?
Yeah.
So then you could even just go Houston, Simpson. You bring on, you push DeBrusk back to maybe just local, and then you find someone Eastern, someone who's based more in the East.
Actually, it's a good point you raised there, because if they had Louis DeBrusk doing just the Oilers local games and maybe the odd national one, they probably don't need Drew Remenda anymore. And I'm sure Rogers is listening to the feedback about Drew Remenda. He's not well received by Oilers watchers, and they've had to keep him on because they've needed him to cover games when Louis has been doing national work. So, yeah, actually, that's a good point. You could definitely see Louis maybe being pushed down to the point of, maybe doing some national games on busier nights and maybe working the first round of the playoffs or something like that. But primarily being the Oilers color guy, and then you've got Houston Simpson for your late game on Saturdays, and then you've got Chris leading the coverage out east for the early games with the other guys up there.
The other thing that I'm wondering, and I don't know where this is, but we have had this debate in Vancouver specifically about the 4 o'clock game, and it used to always be the Leafs and the Canucks at 4 o'clock. But there is a section of Canuck fans that don't mind that 4 o'clock game. And back in the day, it used to be that that there was a Western game in an early slot. Could we go back to that split where we see a Western game come up at an early spot? Like you could finally get some 4:00 games in Vancouver where Houston and Simpson could call, and then maybe you do your Calgary, Edmonton, Randorf, DeBrusk.
I don't know about that.
They still do they still have 2 games on late night, the late game anyways at times too.
Right.
Like, that'll still happen. Like, and maybe they give Colby Armstrong a shot at being a color commentator out east.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people looking for Kevin Bieksa to do some color too.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I think he's best suited for the studio, in my opinion. But boy, it would be interesting to hear him do some color, because when he was doing that stuff at the All-Star game there, I mean, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think they would. Because I know they have given him a couple shots at it, and they want to bring him in a lot more full time. I just don't know if that's what Kevin wants to do. He still is based out of Anaheim as well, so that's the one thing, is he's not based out of his Grimsby, Ontario base unless it's the summer. In the winter, he goes back down to Anaheim.
Yeah, I mean, it should be noted, Hockey Night does quite a number of games on their schedule every year out of California, because those are Pacific Division teams. So maybe he gets some of that workload when let's say it's in Edmonton at Los Angeles late game or something. Maybe he gets on with that.
And I think the other thing, I don't follow the Winnipeg Jets Twitter enough to have a full opinion of this, so I'm asking this as a question, but I don't think they get enough national games. I think they're kind of in that sort of no man's land where they're right in the middle, and they're like in between the Calgary, Edmonton, Vancouver triangle and the Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal triangle. Where do they fit in all of this, right? And I think there is an opportunity with this Cuthbert move to open the door to do more Winnipeg games in a national sense.
I still think at the end of the day, it's the market size, the TV viewership, the potential ratings that make those decisions, as opposed to announcers.
No, I know, but I mean,
Vancouver gets more of the late games, and Toronto, we get just inundated with Toronto games in there for the early.
Yeah. I mean, I know the Western Canada doesn't, a good chunk of Western Canada doesn't want to see as much Leaf content as they do.
I still think Jim Houston will be doing some amount of Leaf games, especially if they're traveling west. But it remains to be seen. I don't think there's any question that his workload for the Leafs when they're playing in the East is going to be reduced. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah. From the TSN side, I think the biggest winner out of this is Dustin Nielsen, who has been calling CFL games with Matt Dunnigan. I think he's moved up. I think he's a guy that I suspect we're going to be hearing a lot more of, probably in terms of CFL games. I could see him maybe not next year, because I don't think we're going to have a CFL season this year, but I think next Grey Cup, I think that's probably going to be Gord Miller, but I think down the line we're going to be hearing Dustin Nielsen calling Grey Cup games.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I mean, I think the next regular season will be a bit of a trial run between the people that they have. We mentioned Rick Ball earlier. Wonder if that becomes part of the equation there as well. I think what they really like about Dustin Nielsen is a lot of their higher rated games are games from the West Division, particularly Rough Riders games. So having the play-by-play announcer doing the bigger games based in the West certainly, again, is from a travel point of view attractive for the network. I don't see there's any way of Rod Black being the number one announcer as experienced as he is, and he's called the Grey Cup on radio for the last number of years. I just don't see that happening. He fits well in the role of a number two announcer, but I think they'd be going in some other direction for a number one CFL announcer that would be calling the Grey Cup.
Yeah, I that's sort of where I'm not seeing Rod Black being moved up. I think he's got his role, and I think I don't know him, but he seems content in his role. But Sean, before I go on with my other theory, did you have a comment on that, or?
Oh, I think we'll also hear more from Rod Smith as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and he has, enormous credibility. I think right now, if you had to place odds on who's calling the next Grey Cup on TSN, Rod Smith is probably the front runner.
And another one that there's a couple of other names that I wonder are going to move. One I could see move into the hockey role for sure. I don't know if either they move them around, but I think that there's an opportunity. I'm reading that TSN wasn't super. Not like, I mean, obviously you're losing a talent like Chris Cuthbert. That's a huge loss, but there is depth there, and I wonder if we hear Kate Burness start calling some NHL games on a regular basis.
Was she calling some of the women's games and everything?
She was hosting CFL panels. She was hosting, and she was hosting some NHL panels, and I do believe she has called some games.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be interesting to see there. I mean, if she were to get some games, I would imagine it'd be either the Senators or Habs games, but probably Senators.
I don't know what Leah Hextall's contract situation is, but if they want to go that road, that's who I'd go. If I was TSN, I'd go after Leah Hextall and see if you can get her, because she's got more. She's that's what she wants to do. I think Kate Burness is quite happy being and quite good at being more of a host. Yeah. And Leah Hextall is that's what she does now. She calls Manitoba junior hockey. And then if you get her, then you've got someone who does that on day out.
I think TSN's really happy with Kate in their Raptors coverage. I mean, she has the basketball credibility. She has a basketball background, having played at a fairly high level in earlier times. And Leah Hextall, with the last name, of course, has that hockey credibility as well. So, I'm not sure I can envision Kate Burness calling hockey games on TSN, but you never know. Very highly regarded at the network.
And another one that I think is very highly regarded at the network is Kayla Gray, and I wonder what spot they have for her. She's been, she did do some spots with Jay and Dan when one of them are away. She has been getting some real big notoriety. I wonder what their plans are for Kayla Gray. I do see them having they seem to be really high on her. I'm not saying that she's hockey. I'm not saying anything specific in terms of which sport per se, but there certainly seems to be a high admiration from TSN to Kayla Gray.
Yeah, and clearly basketball's her comfort zone there, so I could see them doing more with her in that role too.
And I think we have to understand that and you, Kevin, you know this. You doing play-by-play and trying to commentate on a live action is so much different than sitting around a table on a panel talking about it and being able to have time to think about what you're going to say. So I think this is why I think if they're going to go that route, they need to go after Leah Hextall.
For credibility purposes, I think if they're going to have a female hockey voice, they've got to bring in Leah Hextall or just not do it.
And then I think if you're going to go back to the CFL, what you do is you move Rod Smith out full time out off the panel and have Kate Burness host it. Yeah. She hosts like NFL games and stuff for them as well. Like she's really good at that too.
Yeah. No, yeah. I see what you're saying. I mean, I never really thought about the Leah Hextall part, and I totally, good grief, it was just before COVID, all of this COVID stuff, that Leah Hextall and Cassie Campbell called that game in Calgary. Who were they playing? I can't even remember. They were
playing. It was Vegas.
It was Vegas.
And the Flames.
Yeah, that was this year.
Yeah, I know. It seems like a lifetime ago. Hey.
Yeah.
One thing about Leah Hextall is I don't think she's committed to Sportsnet. I don't think she's got like this long-term like exclusive contract or whatever. So for TSN to get her, I don't think that would be overly difficult.
No, but I guess I never thought about that. But I think my point really is there is opportunities for them for TSN to move in a different way.
Yeah, and even AJ Malesko, like I think it'd be tougher because unfortunately I think TSN's a Canadian company and you need to be promoting Canadian talent, but if they can't get Leah Hextall and AJ Malesko is available, that's another option that they have.
They also have Tessa Bonheim.
I think Tessa would be a good color option.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do they have Matt Devlin do other things other than basketball?
No.
No, he did call some CFL games in 2012 due to Rod Black and Gord Miller and Rod Smith, basically everybody but Chris Cuthbert going over to London for the Olympics. But that was done on a very emergency basis there. They just didn't have any other good options at the time. Like Dustin Nielsen wasn't part of the equation then. So, I don't know.
There's not enough games to give them.
Yeah.
They as you said, you just listed, they got Rod Smith, Rod Black, they've got Gord Miller, they've got Dustin Nielsen. They've got depth at that position. They don't need to be pulling Devlin away from the Raptors to do that.
Yeah, and one of the issues, and this was brought up in 2012. I mean, Matt Devlin, he did I think 3 games or something. Wasn't very many, but he's a guy with the Tennessee accent covering Canadian football. I think that's something that the network probably is like, I don't know. It works for basketball, but for the CFL, you want Canadian voices on the mic for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's certainly going to be interesting as what's going to happen. And, it's an exciting time for both networks. And, it's... I love talking about this play-by-play stuff because these pairings I geek out over that. So,
well, just what a life if you're Chris Cuthbert, eh? I mean, so he gets terminated in 2005 by the CBC. Turns out to be the best thing ever for his career at the time. Because the CFL ended up moving to TSN 3 years later.
Yeah.
So he ended up getting the Grey Cup again. He got to work the 2010 Olympics and call the golden goal with Crosby and all that. So one change of network, sort of allows his career to take off in a better way. And then now he's at the end of a contract and can go wherever the hell he wants. And look what he's getting now. Like, it's just like, what a life. Like, good for Chris. Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah. The one Houston call I will never forget that still sticks with me is after the Saturday of the Humboldt tragedy is where they say that you can take refuge in this game. Let's try. That's still to me just that hearing that just gives me chills after everything that happened. That was the Saturday after the Humboldt tragedy. It was the final. It was a Hockey Night Canada. The Leafs were playing somebody, and then it was the Sedin's final game in Edmonton. And I just that to me is always that's my favorite Houston call. But anyway, yeah. Is there anything else we need to chat about this week?
Nope.
No, I don't think so.
We will be bringing back the NHL draft content when Devin is back, which hopefully will be next week, going back to 2011. 2011. I think we might stop at 2010, or I don't know. We'll have a discussion about that. We have another project that we are going to do. I don't know if we have confirmed the date of it yet. So I think we'll wait on that as I'm meandering on this, but we're preparing to talk about something. We'll talk about that off air. Never mind. I keep doing that. Anyway.
This podcasting excellence here right now.
This is why you go to school. You follow Schneids on Twitter at CHNEIDZ. You follow Heidi at Heidi Amazeballs. You follow Devin. Can people follow Devin at GordHow09?
It really means
GordHow09.
GordHow09. I read it as O. I know that O and 0 are different, but I read it as O in my head. It is 0, Kevin. Yes. So follow them. Devin puts up pictures of his dog, and it's very nice. So, Tyler, how do we follow you?
I'm on Twitter at TNoble, TNOBLE.
And I am BeardedCanuck03 on Twitter.
And I am KEVOLE, and we will talk to you all soon. Bye for now.